Hey everybody, welcome to the Kind Faith podcast for the weekend. Are you ready for Bible fun? We're going to dive straight into the scripture, no question, no setup, but we're going to read the passage and ask this question as we read, which is, do you find anything in these two stories that disturb you or bug you or are speed bumps? So here is the passage. We're in Mark chapter 7, verse 24. And Jesus has just talked about what defiles a person. And now he's jumping into a bit of travel. Because it says, and from there he arose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon. Tyre and Sidon were on the coast. Tyre and Sidon are in current day Lebanon. And he is in Galilee, which is something like 100 miles away from the coast. So this is some travel. This is the equivalent of walking from here up to Napa-ish is Jesus's travel. So that gives you the context. This is a huge span of time that passes between his talking about what defiles a person and now his moving to do a healing in Tyre and Sidon. So it says that he rose from there and went to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And he entered a house and did not want anyone to know. Yet he could not be hidden. But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard him and came and fell at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. Just a little context if you're not familiar with that word Gentile. There was established in the theology of Judaism and in the Old Testament the idea that God had chosen a people to bless, that they might bless the world. And those chosen people were the Jews, and everyone else lived outside the blessing. They weren't accountable to the rules, but at the same time, because they weren't accountable to the rules of the Jews, they were also unclean. They weren't worthy to come and worship at the temple unless they'd gone through essentially a conversion and ceremonial cleansing. So that's the context. That's why we're calling out that she's a Gentile, but she's not just a Gentile. She's Syrophoenician by birth, which means her home was probably Crete, but Mediterranean. So this is not a Canaanite Gentile or a far Near East Gentile from Babylon or Syria. This is a Gentile from closer to Italy and Greece. Not a huge significance, but it's important because it gives us more context to what Jesus is now about to do. So she begs him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And this is what he says to her. Little children, let the little children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. But she answered him, yes, Lord. Yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And he said to her, for this statement you may go on your way. The demon has left your daughter. And she went home and found the child laying in bed and the demon gone. All right, you ready? Now he returns from the region of Tyre and went through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee. So he now reverses course and walks another 100-ish miles back to Galilee. I don't know about you. This is not a big part of it. This is just a sidebar. I don't know about you, but when I'm driving down the freeway and I need to get gas, I want the gas station on the freeway, on the side of the freeway that I am going. I do not want to go out of my way to just fill up with gas. Jesus goes 100 miles out of his way to do a simple miracle and leave. Crazy. So he's now back. And it says this, he returned from the region of Tyre and went through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee to the region of the Decapolis. Verse 32. And they brought to him a man who was deaf and had a speech impediment, and they begged him to lay hands on him. And taking him aside from the crowd privately, he put his fingers into his ears, and after spitting, touched his tongue. and looked up to heaven and sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. And Jesus charged him to tell no one, but the more he charged them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, he has done all things well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. So, anything bug you in that passage? I mean, that was the leading question. Did anything bug you in this passage? I'm gonna give you mine. Working with the Syrophoenician woman, and there's probably more than just mine, but working with the Syrophoenician woman, she comes and asks for healing, and he says to her, let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to dogs. So he basically calls her a dog and says, you're not worthy of sitting at the table, it seems, right? That is a big speed bump. That is something that's disturbing. The other thing that kind of gets under my skin with this whole thing is the idea that there is an exclusive group of people and a non-exclusive group of people, similar to the dogs issue. And then the final thing is, why spit? Why couldn't Jesus just speak healing or put his hands on the guy's shoulder or head or hand or mouth and heal him? Why is this healing so unusual? What's going on here? Well, the whole point that we're getting to in this sermon is there's a lot to be discovered about God in the miracles God works. Let me say that again. There's a lot to be discovered about God in the miracles God works. And these miracles are teachings, and I'll unpack that in a minute for us. But these miracles are primarily teachings about God. They're wonderful things that happen to people. They're incredible signs of the power of God, but they go way deeper than that. And here's why. Let's talk about the randomness of these stories, right? These stories are random. Jesus has just had a huge conflict with the Pharisees about what makes someone clean or unclean. And in a sense, and not just in a sense, pretty directly, Jesus unpacks Moses and reframes the teachings of Moses in Numbers and Leviticus and throughout the Old Testament. He kind of reframes it. So the beginning of this context is really, or the context of this passage is a reframing of Moses and what Moses taught. Coming right after this is manna from heaven. Jesus feeds the 4,000. We're going to talk about that next week. But look at the context. Moses' teachings are being reframed by Jesus, and the whole concept of a people being set free from slavery and being provided for by God, led by Moses, is being alluded to in the context of these two stories. And then we have these two random stories. Why did Mark feel the need to drop these two stories in here? It very likely was, this was the timeline, and Mark is just following the timeline. So the big question could be, why did Jesus decide to put these two miracles in the context that he put them in? But either way, there's a big question to be asked, and it has to do with teaching. The miracle, both of the miracles, are intended to draw the people deeper into their understanding of God. And I want to talk about this at the end, but I want to give you a hint about the end here. You and I experience miracles from God every day. And if you're like me, the farthest you get with those miracles is acknowledging them and thanking God for them, which is, by the way, good. I don't want to undermine that, but there is a deeper question. when we experience the miracles of God, whether it is miraculous healing, whether it's something that defies the laws of physics or that defies the laws of economics, or if it's something that transforms and brings healing to a relationship or to your heart, whatever the healing is, whether it's monumental or minor, it has something to say, to declare about God to us. So let's look at this passage. First of all, what does the miracle with the Syrophoenician woman say about Jesus? Here's Jesus talking to her. She comes and says, I would like my daughter to be healed from a demon. And he says, let the children be fed first. It is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. So, a couple things are being brought out here. One thing that is being distinctly brought out here is Jesus is affirming the teaching of Moses. He's upholding the theology that God chooses a people to bless and wants to use them to bless the world. God chooses a people to bless and wants to use them to bless the world. He's upholding that theology. He's saying what Moses taught is true and it continues to be true. Now, what we know is that Jesus he broadens that, and the people of God, blessed to bless the world, becomes the church and not the Jews. It has this broader definition. But I love the missional power of it. This isn't about exclusivity. This is about God's choosing so that the people he's chosen bless the world. He wants this miracle to teach that lesson in a powerful way. And there's a really simple application in this. God has chosen you. And God is working minor and major miracles in your life to let you know you are chosen and calling you missionally to bless the world. The miracle isn't just for your own good. It's for the world's good. It's that you would understand him more deeply, be blessed by him, and then go bless the world. That theology Jesus is holding on to again in this conversation around this miracle. It's an important learning within the context of the miracle. But the second part is this speed bump about the dogs, right? What is happening there about the dogs? Well, there's a reference, and I'll have to put it in the notes below because I forgot to put it in my notes here, in Numbers, about a body that has been torn by wild animals should not be eaten by man. It will make you unclean. And Jesus, in this statement to the woman, which is, let the children eat first, it's not right for the children's bread to take children's bread and throw it to the dogs, is a not too veiled reference to his being torn by the dogs on the cross and his body becoming bread to eat for the salvation of the world. And that this chosen people's blessing is for Gentiles too. It is for the outsiders, because she catches on, right? She catches on and says even the children get to eat the crumbs from the table. She understood the Old Testament theology. In fact, if you were a farmer and you were a faithful Jewish farmer in Old Testament times, it was required of you to leave the edges of your crops unharvested for the sojourner and the passerby. And that was often poor Israelites, but it was just as often a Gentile. God was all about, throughout time, caring for not just those he's chosen to bless, but the whole world. He wanted to bless a people, to bless the world, and he wanted the blessings to flow out from us. And so she now is declared included. This miracle that he does for her is a great declaration that it is no longer just the Jews who are chosen, but everybody gets to come and eat of the bread that has been thrown to the dogs. It's a fascinating connection and a powerful connection. So Jesus is not calling her a dog. Jesus is reframing Moses. He's affirming Moses that a people will be chosen, blessed to be a blessing. And now he's reframing Moses and saying that what you learned from Moses in Leviticus and Numbers is now expanded to everyone, and this miracle is proof of it. And then he goes on to heal the deaf man, right? The deaf and dumb man. So let's look at that passage. It's verse 31. He returned to Tyre through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee, to the region of the Decapolis, and they brought to him a man who was deaf and had a speech impediment. And they begged him to lay hands on him. And taking him aside from the crowd privately, he put his fingers into his ears and spit and touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, be opened. And his ears were opened. The big issue for me here is why spit? Why spit? Both of these miracles are weird, right? The conversation with the woman is weird. The healing of the deaf man with the speech impediment is weird. What is up with the spit? There's something to be learned here in this story as well. Spit in the Old Testament is almost always a negative thing. You'd spit in the face to curse somebody. You'd spit on the ground or at somebody to express your disdain or their uncleanness ceremonially. Spit was something that made you ceremonially unclean. So why is Jesus spitting here? Now, it could be that this is just an expression of the action that he took, that he used his spit. And some commentators have noted that there are some examples in non-biblical ancient literature of spit being used to heal people, but it's not biblical and it's not landing in the Old Testament. Spit, vomit, anything that's coming out of the mouth was seen as a curse or unclean, as something that would curse or something that would make unclean. And there's one use of this set of words. It's not this specific word, but spit, vomit, saliva. And it's in Jonah chapter 2, verse 10. You probably know what I'm talking about. In Jonah chapter 2, verse 10, Jonah was swallowed by the whale. And at the end of chapter 2, what does the whale do? The whale spits him up on the ground. Some translations say vomit. The grouping of words tend to be grouped together conceptually. It's not the exact same word, but, and this is a bit of a reach, but I'm going to reach for it. This redemption of spit, this undoing of a concept of cursing, is calling this man out from the belly of the whale of deafness and his inability to speak and the darkness of that, and bringing him onto dry land where he can stand firmly and be in the light. This miracle is God saying, I'm undoing this thing that you have automatically called cursing, and I am using it to bring hope and light and life. Pretty amazing. It's not just, gee, thanks. So I want to get back to that, gee, thanks. Because that kind of is where I live when I experience the miracles of God, isn't it? Where you do, like, God saves you from an accident. The other day I was riding my bike down the road and I was paying more attention to the car behind me than the giant pothole Didn't even see it. My tire rode past the pothole this far from dropping in. And I said, gee, thanks, God, which is good, right? It's a good thing. The other day I was pretty depressed, pretty despairing. I've been trying to build a coaching business and reaching out, trying to get clients and folks who want to engage in leadership coaching. And as I've been working, I had a couple really dry weeks where there were no new clients. And I began to wonder, is this gonna work? And I was sitting in my chair praying and kind of moaning and groaning with God about the direction that he'd called my life to go, and is this gonna work out? And only you, Lord, can bring clients, so you need to do some miracles because I'm at the end of my rope. I don't know who else to ask or what else to do. And I finished my prayer time, I opened my computer, and the first email I set my eyes on is a new client. It's a person who said, hey, I want a contract. I want to do a 6-month commitment with you. And I was blown away. It was a miracle for me. It was something I just thanked God deeply for. It changed the course of my whole attitude and mood for the day and for the week. And I stopped and thought, Lord, what are you saying to me in this miracle? And I heard God say really clearly, what I'm communicating to you in this miracle is that I see you. I will provide for you. I've got you. Now, I heard him real clearly. It wasn't an audible voice, but it was God's Spirit testifying about the miracle within me. And I realized at that moment that there are miracles happening in my day every day. And if I notice them, the deepest I go with the miracles is that I say, thank you, Lord, and acknowledge them. But there's another step to take. And the other step is the big point of this sermon, and it's the challenge of this whole thing, which is when you experience the micro or major miracles of God in your life, do you stop and thank him? And do you reflect on what he is saying to you in them? It's a giant way that God speaks to us. God speaks to us through his daily, sometimes mundane, sometimes major miracles. And he communicates about his character, about the theology we should hold, about what we want. And so I'm going to end this message with this. We're going to take time as a group on the weekend. And so I'm just going to give you this opportunity to take time for yourself to make a list. What are the miracles that happened in your life in this last week? And it doesn't have to be exhaustive. And God is not going to punish you if you don't list everything. So just list the miracles that are kind of right there present for you. Write them down. Then next column, if you're a column maker, say a prayer of thanks. Write a prayer of thanks next to it. And then the next column, ask God the question, and what did you want me to understand about you in it? What did you want me to understand about you in it? We're going to take time as a group and just what miracle, thank God for it, and then what did God tell you in it? I hope you do it individually as you're sitting there at home, that you would really take time to reflect. We have this God who is hugely active. We have this God who's willing to walk 100 miles just to give us a simple miracle. We have a God who's blessed us to be a blessing. We have a God who's allowed his body to be torn by dogs that we might be fed in salvation. We have a God who sees us. We have a God who wants to turn cursing into blessing. That's the kind of God we have. And he's got so much more to say. So what's he been saying to you? God bless you. Let's have a great week this next week and let's really pay attention. Have a great weekend.